Coming up on this edition of the Joint Podcast.
That I'm able to do the things that I've done. I've had some real hair-raising experiences, had guns pulled on me and the whole 9 yards, but you just have to somewhere, you just have to trust God. You have to trust God that God put you out here, and I have to trust God. We have to, and I think that's what we have to do now, because people are complaining about Trump and all that stuff. I said, what happened to God?
At the intersection of logic and truth, this is the logical lawyer, and it's that part. Exploring legal, social, and cultural issues with insight, clarity, and purpose. Truth and logic, sharp and clear. Insight and hope, we bring it here. Where truth meets logic and action. Logical lawyer, and it's that part.
Welcome to the Talk of the Times, a joint production of The Logical Lawyer with host Bernie Brown and the It's That Part podcast, hosted by yours truly, Jesse Lee Hammonds. And although we approach the various items and persons of interest from different backgrounds professionally, Bernie being a prosecutor and former Los Angeles, California assistant city attorney, as well as a Hall of Fame member of the John M. Langston Bar Association of Los Angeles, just to name a couple of headliners, and me, a longtime former manager of human resources and corporate assets at the Fortune 500 company AT&T, and former radio and international club jock, we have a shared commitment to clarity, logic, lawfulness, relevance, as well as truth in every fact, all brought together with real conversations amongst ourselves and with others about the times in which we have and currently live. It's the Talk of the Times.
We're back at it with Bernie Brown, the logical lawyer,
okay.
and with yours truly, Jesse. It's that part, which is actually my X and my YouTube handle.
Okay, all right.
The other formats, they have variations of it's that part.
Okay.
But those two is known as Jesse, it's that part. But anyway, today we're joined by someone whose story is as much about transformation as it is about service. Dr. Wright is a licensed pastoral counselor, minister, author, and someone who's dedicated more than 30 years of helping people heal. Whether through recovery from addiction, finding faith, or restoring families, from Skid Row to the pulpit, from counseling sessions to his own journey of sobriety. Dr. Wright has lived out the gospel in a very real way, and he joins us now. Dr. Wright, thank you for joining us and being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. It's always a pleasure to be able to share what God has done, doing, and will be doing in the future. Yeah, it's ongoing. Yes, sir.
Well, I was just so impressed by all these degrees. I mean, Ph.D.s and master's degrees and licenses. Tell us about a few of those degrees and what it takes to get all these.
Well, let me share something with you. I'll share this in a quick scenario. When I recovered from drugs and alcohol and got through my first year, because I could never get a year. I could always like 2 or 3 months. So when I got my first year, I just kept going. And I just kept going, and I got into the 12-step program, got a sponsor. A sponsor walked me through, joined Faithful Central, went through all the, so I started going to classes, taking the New Believers class, and all those things. So somewhere down the line, somebody said, you'd be a great counselor. So I went into the counseling and the lay counseling thing, did all of that. Counseled there for 7 years. Then after I did that, somebody, the pastor said, man, you need to go back to school. I was like, I don't want to go back to school. But I did. I got in and I started, because I didn't get an AA. I passed that. I went past AA and went to the BA. But I got in school. I got a BA. So because I was a member of the National Christian Counselors Association, the next degree only cost me me like $3,000. So it was really inexpensive. So I just kept going. I got my master's in pastoral counseling and religion. Kept going, and then I stopped there for about a year or two. And everyone kept saying, go get your Ph.D. And I'm like, man, I can't afford a Ph.D. So national counselors and Christian counselors came around again. And for about $6,000, I was able to finish. So, but here's the key to it, man. It was that each degree, like my BA degree, when I finished, half of that degree went to my master's. So I only had to take like 12 units. See what I'm saying? If you take the same genre, they transfer over. So when I got my master's just transferred over into the PhD, which only needed like 8 to 10 units, and those units were just either writing a dissertation or I did 35 case studies, which I did because I'd already been doing the work. So I just went back in my archives and put together, and it just moved out that way, you know. And then some people say, well, how did it? And I used to wonder how people get 2 and 3 degrees, but if you take them in the same field, you know, when you transfer to the next, you don't have to do the whole curriculum. You just do the courses that you needed. So you'll have maybe a year, 6 months to a year to do them, and you get the next degree. So, and I was just in that motion of I was in recovery, and I was just moving. And I was
That's
just moving.
Great information. But here, you have a PhD in the philosophy of Christian counseling. Yeah. What is that? What is that?
Okay, well, you know, we have a secular psychology, which is a soft science, and where somebody will come up with the secular side of a situation, and then we have a biblical side, and we understand the sin nature of man. So we realize that most of the stuff that we're going through is just from the sins of the forefathers. But the secular degree won't acknowledge that. So the Christian counselor sits down and he has to show you what the scriptures say about it. You know, what is God telling? What is God saying about this? You know, you don't see secular psychology in the Bible. So and he talks about people like even when he had the man on the island and he cast out all the demons, and he told him to go back and let them see who he was. And he was on the island. It kind of gave the impression he was schizophrenic, bipolar. He had all of these mental illnesses. But when he met Jesus, and Jesus spoke into his life, all of those they dissipated. So I started thinking about, what about regular people? I said, or people that are Christians, you know. I said, wouldn't that work the same way? And I started just to do my own investigations, and I started to see that a lot of people have what the world creates as mental illness, and it's actually just sin. We all fall short. We all have, you know, all of us are a little bit schizophrenic. All of us are a little bit anxious. All of us are a little bit bipolar. You know, if we just look at it, and by the grace of Allah. Not Jesse. Not Jesse. No,
especially Jesse. Especially me. I'm like Paul. I'm the original one.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned Paul, because as I really started studying and looking at what was going on and the stuff that he was going through in his life, or we don't think about like Job. You know, what do you think Job was? You know, the Bible talks about it a certain way, but if you put yourself in his position, what do you think he was really going through? Boy. I mean, they don't talk about what he probably, like when his wife said, curse God and die, he probably thought about it. You know, he might probably said, you know, something that might not be a bad idea, because, you know, but when you start really looking at the characteristics of the people in the Bible, they weren't any different than you and me, the 12 disciples walking together, 12 grown men, musty men, walking 40 miles in the desert. Could you imagine the conversations they had? Could you imagine what Jesus was trying to keep them together? You know, you could just imagine, you know, we can't ride 2 miles in a car, and they walking 40 miles in the desert.
40 miles in the desert.
Yeah, man, in the hot heat, and woo! I can imagine, you know, when I really start, you know, God started showing me with the realities. These were ordinary men. I picked 12 ordinary men, and these 12 ordinary men were humans, and they had the same characteristics as anybody else. So you had probably somebody with schizophrenic, bipolar, or, you know, anxiety disorders, depression, or whatever, all of this stuff. You're walking 40 miles in the desert. You can imagine all the symptoms of things that were going on.
Well, it sounds like you had to overcome some just major stuff. What was the story with the drugs? Did you say drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, I was always sought to be accepted. I don't know, somewhere it's funny because I have a friend of mine named Laura, and she was talking to me about my childhood. And in my childhood, as a little kid, I lived a pretty normal childhood, so I thought. But my mother wasn't maternal. My mother was material. She loved me, but my mother showed her love by buying things and making sure you had the right clothes. And I was craving maternal love. Everybody who had a maternal mother that hugged you and kissed you and stuff like that, I was always over their house. So, but as I got older, I realized that was something I was missing, and I always looked to be accepted. I couldn't play football or basketball real well, even though I could be accepted with the guys because I figured out how to get accepted. But I've always sought acceptance, so I got into music, which I stuck with. It was something I liked. But I realized that as I moved on in the 70s, the drug epidemic started to come about, and I didn't know nothing about it. Addictive personalities or anything, because we thought about a drug addict as being an alcoholic or a heroin addict, somebody in the alley falling over, not realizing that we had addictive personalities and that we were using drugs, we were becoming addicted to drugs and didn't even know it. So I did like 13 years of crack cocaine.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was out there, man, trying to live and really trying to die, actually, because I really believed in my heart that I wasn't going to ever come out of it. I thought I was going to die in it, and I'll share this right quick. One night in the dope house, and I call it the Road to Damascus experience. Everybody had gone to bed, and I'm sitting up at the table. Had lost my job, sitting up at the table. Still had my card by the grace of God, but had lost everything. And I was sitting at the table. All the dope was gone, and I heard God say, "Choose this day who you will serve." And people say you don't hear God, but I heard God, and I told him, I said, "Lord, if you save me tonight, I'll serve you the rest of my life." And that was 34 years ago. I've been clean 34 years.
Wow.
And I got up and I left. I got up and I left that house. And I went to my sponsor and crying. And my sponsor started to sponsor me, took me to his church just before Faithful Central. And I just started doing the work, and I just never looked back. And that's how we got all the way to the Ph.D., because I just kept going. And I do that now. I just keep going. I study, I read, I write, and I just work on having that God experience and amazing what God does in that process in terms of really getting to know Him personally. And that's kind of how it, in a nutshell, how that all came out. Surely I had the emotions, the irritable restlessness, discontent, felt less than, depressed. All of those kind of things, wanting to kill myself, and all the things that most people who are in addictions go through.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how enslaving drugs can be. I mean, it is the modern day slavery.
Well, actually, if I get more honest to you than just that,
yeah,
I think it's just selfish. I think people don't realize how enslaving just life is. Now, because everybody's caught up in some way. It may not have gone to that extreme, but we find people have anger issues, or people are extremely, like I got a friend, she's chronically depressed, and you're trying to figure out, well, how are you chronically depressed? But you're a Christian, and you say you love God, the all-powerful God, but it doesn't make sense to me if you have a real relationship with God. But we have people like that people are going to secular counselors for a spiritual problem. Mm-hmm. And that has been the design, that's been the drive that I've had all my life in terms of writings. Like I got a paper called, "What If We Believed?" And it comes out of Mark 9, but the man says, he told the Lord, he said, "I believe, but help my unbelief."
Right.
You know how powerful that, when I first read it, I cried. Mm-hmm. Because that's exactly where I was. I had a fundamental concept of God, and really didn't have a strong belief system. And I think most people operate from that perspective. And as long as you don't bother them, even the people sitting in the church, as long as you don't bother them, they're cool. Say something that counteracts and watch what you get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, boy.
I believe that. Many of us are parked there. Yes.
Yeah, they'll leave the platform. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll say, "Whoa, sister such and such, where'd that come from?"
Right.
Yeah, because it's a part that they never heal. They never get that healing. They hear about it, hallelujah, praise Jesus, and the testimonies they hear, but they never have a personal relationship, a personal experience with God. Like I said, that road to Damascus thing that Paul had. That's what made Paul so powerful. He didn't take Paul's personalities and stuff from him. He just enhanced it when he turned it over, and Paul surrendered, and the power of God started to manifest in his life. And now even the disciples were scared of Paul, because they would say, "Where a man like that come from?" But he took the time. He took the time to have a personal relationship with Christ, and that's where I'm at in what I do. That's Dr. D Speaks. Is what I'm talking about, the practical relationship that you can have with God if you get willing to go in and open and dig in, get deep. You can get as deep as God. You can go as deep as you want to go if you're willing. And
that sounds like a great name for a podcast right there.
What?
Dr. D Speaks.
As it is. Coming your way soon.
That's right.
Is that
That's
right,
right.
Jesse?
That's exactly right.
That's why we're here right now.
We're gonna do that. You know, and you also co-pastored an outreach ministry.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of ministry, that brought the homeless to Christ.
Yes.
Now, outreach is one of those words we use in church circles, but on the ground, it means food, or usually means food, shelter, conversation, prayer, and sometimes exhaustion. When you think back on those years that you're involved with that,
Yes.
what does sustainable outreach look like to you, and how did you balance the spiritual call to share the gospel with the very practical need to help people simply survive?
Well, the initiating factor was somebody help me. So part of the 12 steps says, having had the spiritual awakening in the 12th step, in other words, after you've gone through 12 steps and what have you, you take this back. Right. And you take this back to somebody else. So the goal is to take somebody back through the 12 steps so that they can do the same thing. Spiritually, when you move out of that, then you take all that, and now you go out and now you diminish the gospel, not only just to people who are on drugs and alcohol, but anybody who needs it. It opens the door now that I, in any way, shape, form, or fashion, because everybody who's homeless is not necessarily that. People think they're all addicted. They're not. So, some people just, and then there's people who you just need to shift them in the right direction, and they'll take off on their own. Others, you have to spend more time, but the outreach part of it is just simply saying that we just go, like he said, go out and make disciples. We go out, and before I can actually make a disciple, I have to get you on point. I have to see if I can get you first off the drugs. If I can sit down and have a real conversation with you. I usually ask open-ended questions to try to see where a person is. Well, how's that working for you? So I don't want to do that. I said, well, how's this working for you out here? Say, so if I can offer you something that might do you better, say, would you be willing to look at it? I said, on the opposite side, if it doesn't, I can gladly refund your misery.
Right.
Because it's always going to be here. It's always going to be here. The misery never leaves the table. Now we move into a different place. But the misery, I could stop after 34 years. I could just go back out there, and then that's just facetious because I can't, because God got me now. But but symbolically, I could go back. I could just kick all this to the side and just go out there, which I probably would just die. It probably would kill me. Satan would take me out if he got me back. So that's kind of how. And then we have to think about that. I don't know who's out there. I don't know. I might be the very person to save somebody's life. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I could be ministering to 30 people, and one or two people come to Christ, turn their lives around. And so, and there's nothing greater to me than that light bulb coming on and somebody's life change.
Well, you worked with LA Missions and Skid Row. It just seems like to me that's the front line.
But it is.
That's the true sincerity.
That's
right
where it
there.
is.
The authenticity. Tell us about that. The front line.
Well, first of all, I believe that being on the front line is a calling, and you have to be able to get out of self, because if you can't get out of self, you can't do it. Because first of all, those people who are hurting out there on the streets, they can see all through you.
Right. Not everybody can do it.
Not everybody can do it, and they'll see right through you. They can, like I used to be able to go out and minister downtown and was protected because you understand that there's a hierarchy in homelessness. At the wine guard, just like a gang. Like your gang has the OGs, they have OG homeless people. And there's people that don't run the streets, so they'll tell you, that's Dr. Wright, man, don't bother him. So it gave me carte blanche. I can go anywhere I want to go. I can walk into the mist and sit and have conversations with guys and didn't have to worry about that. But the front line is that people are out there and they've created these environments where people. This is what's by design. My design was to keep you down here downtown. The first design was just to keep you in one little area. Like the Skid Row area, we wanted to keep you there. And then some weirdo decides that we need to put tents. And that took us out of the Skid Row area and started to expand it, where people used to say there'll never be homeless people in Beverly Hills, and here it is.
Right.
Yeah, and all the way to the beach, and all the way up the coast, and then you get on the 110 freeway, and all the way down to 110. Every overpass has a tent. What you did, you just opened the door, and people now I really don't want to get off the street because I got a place to stay now.
Right.
And I can go downtown and eat. There's places where I can eat. There's places where I can get clothes. I can go get free medical. What else more do I need? I don't have to. I can work. I can go get a job, and I can still stay on the streets and not have to pay any bills. So you see what I'm saying? The enemy just twisted around where people became real comfortable with living on the streets. Just like, and I used to always put that analogy, especially with even people in the church. We got people in the church who are comfortable. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go no further. I don't want to go no further. I believe Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior, died on the cross. Okay, that's cool. That's good enough for me. And
I'm loving the milk and cookies.
Yeah. No, I don't want to go no deeper. I don't want to sit and listen to a pastor preach sometime that he's preached. You've heard the same sermon since you were 6 and 7 years old. Mm-hmm. So you're going, okay, so now, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The pastors need to start to preach real word, real things that are up for now. But a lot of pastors can't do it because they haven't had that experience. But we need people to talk about what's really going on. We need to stir the church up, man. I said, you guys, we got people in there, just like I go out and stir the homeless people up, or people that are in my programs and stuff like that. I have to stir those people up. I have to speak life into their spirit, not to their head. It's easy to talk to somebody's head, but to talk to their heart, so that people really, and then once they start to gravitate and they start to trust you, then you can start to lead them where you need them to go.
It just seems like it takes so much courage. Do you actually go out there to where the homeless are? And
man, I sat out with a client. One day he went out about 3:00 in the afternoon, got drunk, and they go, "Yeah, David's out front drunk." I'm sitting on the ground. On the ground next to this guy. I got off work at 5. I was out there with him till 7:30.
Wow.
Talking, just talking, trying to talk him off the edge. Mm-hmm. Eventually he got up and we got him back in, but that's a calling. That's God doing. That's not Daryl, because Daryl was like ready to go home. I'm like, man, but my coworkers were walking by me, go, "What you doing, man? It's 5 o'clock." Doing what God called me to do. So I tell people it's a calling. Everybody can't do it. They used to send when I was going to master's college. They used to send the white kids from the valley downtown to give sandwiches and to minister, and they come down and get ministered too. I tell people, just because these people on the street don't mean they don't know Jesus.
Right.
You'd be surprised. Yeah, they was eating them alive. I told their pastor, I said, stop bringing them here. I said, you're not helping these people, because they can't relate to these people at all. They really can't. They don't have any idea. You want to come down here and feel sympathy. They're not looking for sympathy. They're not looking at, no. I'll have you, if you keep holding me long, I'll have you be out here homeless.
On that point right there, one of the brothers, I'll just say in class this morning, shared with us, he's a former lieutenant with the LAPD.
Right.
He shared with us that they would go to a certain section of town in LA, and there was this brother that, because we were talking about, how people looked and not judging a book by its cover and that sort of thing. And he said that this brother, he had the one or two thick braids. He had the tattoos on the face, half the face and everything. And he was sagging. And you would look at him initially and think, okay, this guy can be trouble or has been trouble or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you didn't know that guy's story. He had gone through a whole lot. He had repented, and he was living for the Lord. Mm-hmm. And this lieutenant, every time he sees him, he hugs him just like you've been in our class. We hug each other, and greet each other. He said he does that each time. And people would ask him, well, you're dressed like this with a suit and everything, and he's like that. And I think he overheard that, and he said, he pulled the lieutenant to the side and said, hey, I can dress like that too. However, where I'm at and the things that I'm trying to do, these people wouldn't talk to me. Right. Because I wouldn't, they wouldn't trust me because of how I look.
Right.
I can walk anywhere, him speaking, he can walk anywhere in this area and he has credibility. Whereas others, coming in with the suits and everything,
right,
would be suspect. Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, and it's interesting because I always think about, have we forgotten what Jesus did? Jesus didn't go to the best dressed people. No. Jesus went down into the pits. He went down, he said, I got to go to rescue the people. He said, I'm going to get my people out of the murder. I'm going to get the people, but we want to turn our back. And then you'll find that some of these cats that you run into like that be super serious Christians, and
yes,
will run you a circle around you, man.
Right.
You running. They got the scripture down, all of the theology down. I mean, really, these cats is not playing.
Right.
They out there doing the same thing you're doing. So, or when somebody will tell you, and when they start to explain to you where I came from, who I am, dude told me, he said, I believe in Jesus, but I'm still a Crip. He said, I'm a Crip. He said, I'm an OG Crip. He said, I grew up, and my allegiance is still to my gang. He says, I don't bang like that. He said, but my allegiance is still to the gang. He said, because of the fact they raised me. He says, we're doing some different things now. We're not, he said, but if it hit the fan, he said, I'd have to dance. He said, but I'm working hard to change things. We're together. The OGs are now giving away cold clothes and having food giveaways and doing different things. He said, but we still tied. He says, we're still tied. He said, but both ways I'm able to be of service. He says, we haven't had, by the grace of God, we haven't had to go out and gangbang like we used to. He said, but there's a unity that people don't understand, that we're one. And I think that's where we miss it as Christians and stuff like that, because we're not. I always remember that evil moves in one accord. That evil doesn't take time to discuss denomination. Evil just moves in one accord. Christians, we debate, and we're so busy having a debate that evil just moves right around us and keep going, doing what it does. So by the time we realize we're running, trying to catch up, evil's just moving in one accord. It's like water. If you pour water, it just moves in one accord. Whatever in the way with it goes around. I said, but we operate in such part, we can't even work together. I said, man, can we come together? And we can't even come together. And I think that's sad. So some of the practicality of my teaching is trying to get people, first of all, on an individual level, to get your life together with Christ, not just because you live good and you pray and all that, but to really have a personal relationship with the Lord. And what is he really telling you that he wants you to do? Most people don't know. So most of us we're not equipped to fight the battle, even on a small home front. We don't want to pray for people. Like, I was at the church this morning, and then the guy was saying, man, we need help in some areas here. He said, we got a church full of people, nobody wants to help. And that's in the church. So imagine outside of the church, but I thank God that I'm able to do the things that I've done. I've had some real hair-raising experiences. Had guns pulled on me and the whole 9 yards. But you just say you have to somewhere. You just have to trust God. You have to trust God that God put you out here, and I have to trust God. We have to, and I think that's what we have to do now, because people are complaining about Trump and all that stuff. I said, what happened to God?
Right.
What happened to God? Because it's nothing the complaining is going to do about it. We just have to trust that God knows what He's doing, and that He's seen us through all this. So I just trust that God He's going to prevail. And that's the bottom line, and that's where most Christians have to think about. We have to work on our faith. Where are we? Where are you? I asked the guy today, I said, well, where are you? Have you thought about where you are in your walk? You're just going, but you never really asked, you don't even have any idea where you are. And nobody asked you those questions, so you don't ever deal with it.
What did he say?
He didn't say, he sat quietly. I told him, well, don't sit there and try to figure out an answer that appeases me.
Right.
I said, so what you need to do is sit down and examine your own heart and see where you really are. And it's okay wherever you are, because you can always work from that point forward. I said, but at least know where you are. I said, because that's where the enemy comes in, because he know that you don't know where you are.
Right.
Yeah, and all we have to do is just bring a bunch of different people with a bunch of different ideologies and different, philosophies and stuff like that, and you be twisted.
Led astray.
Led astray, man. Because you're already there. You're already over the top. I just ain't moved you yet.
Well, I imagine over the years, you probably helped dozens, maybe hundreds of people get off drugs and leave homelessness. I mean, get off the street. Mm-hmm. That must feel really good inside.
Amen. Yeah, it does. Whenever the light bulb comes on, because once the light bulb comes on wherever you are, then we have hope. Because most people have lost hope, and once the hope is lost, it's over with. Remember they used to say, like a horse breaks his leg, and the horse gives up. Once the horse gives up, even though you can fix his leg, he'll never be the same. In his mind, he's given up, and a lot of people have just given up. They've become real hopeless because the system has failed them on numerous occasions. They promised them the rose garden, they promised them this and promised them that, and it never comes through. So people have just lost hope, and they've learned how to live hopelessly. And that's what you see a lot of times. People. I'll tell you something. I'll challenge both of you guys to do. Next time you're out and driving around, just watch people.
Okay.
Just watch. Don't just watch it. Just watch it.
And that's the talk of the times. On behalf of the co-host Bernie Brown, we thank you for listening, and we hope it compels you into action or triggers some mindful thought about the times in which we live. We also invite you to check out the logical lawyer Bernie Brown and the It's That Part podcast with yours truly, Jesse Lee Hammonds, wherever you listen to your podcast. And for even more Bernie, check out his book on Amazon, A Prosecutor's Analysis of Personal Supernatural Experiences, which is a collection of fascinating stories awaiting your verdict of fact, fiction, fabrication, or fantasy. You decide. You can also connect with Bernie on his website, thelogicalattorney.me. That's thelogicalattorney.me, and connect with me at itsthatpart.com, where you can also access both podcasts. And now you've got it. It's the talk of the times.
At the intersection of logic and truth, this is the logical lawyer, and it's that part. Exploring legal, social, and cultural issues with insight, clarity, and purpose. Truth and logic, sharp and clear. Insight and hope, we bring it here. Where truth meets logic in action. It's the logical lawyer, and it's that part.